All right. Well, welcome back to Couples in Focus. We are in the studio today. As always, I am Michael Preston, along with Thomas Westenholz. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, and I'm ready for another shorter episode today. So I think we
Yes,
kept it quite long last week. So
we
this
did.
week we're gonna try and cut it down so you can do it on the drive to work.
That's right. That's right. We're going to be concise as we talk about the three components of a healthy relationship. What?
What?
Because yeah, because it comes off as very clickbaity, right? And I love hate relationship with clickbait, but it we are talking about the elements of a healthy relationship today, right? What actually make up a healthy, secure relationship? Because we could
Yes.
talk about like, oh, is it healthy? Is it not healthy? These things aren't about what we do in a relationship, right? Because that looks very different from relationship to relationship, right? But it is about a sense of felt experience, right? So we'll use the word of felt sense within the relationship. So you can have these things even if your relationship isn't structured like my relationship, right?
Yes.
You can develop these things in your relationship in a different way than my wife and I developed these things into our relationship, and the way Thomas's partnership, him and his wife have developed that into their relationship. So it's not about this is what you have to do to have a healthy relationship, but if these things aren't a felt sense within your relationship, it is likely that you're struggling and it's been a difficult relationship.
Yes, and I
Right?
also think it's just helpful to kind of have a bit of a model for what does it look
Yeah.
like, because we have all these secure, anxious, avoidant,
Mm,
disorganized
mm.
attachment, and attachment styles are becoming very popular, which is great that we are spreading the
Oh,
knowledge. And
yeah, love
however,
it.
there's still what does it actually look like, a
Right.
secure dynamic? And I think the beautiful thing is you don't have to be two people with secure attachment to have a secure
No,
relationship and a secure dynamic.
no.
So the question is, how does it look like, and
Yeah.
what are some of the things that we consistently see in
Yes.
relationships that are more calm, more regulated, more mutual supportive, right?
That's right.
And where both people, as you say, have a felt sense of, hey, I'm being seen, I'm being heard, I matter, right?
That's
And
right.
there are certain elements that we can see that tend to be prominent in these relationships. They might implement it different, but the core framework is still
Mhm.
pretty similar, right?
That's right.
So that's what we want to kind of talk about a bit today. And I guess I can just
Yeah.
throw out the first one, right?
Yeah.
Which is accessible,
Yes.
right? And again, this sound so simple, and yet very, very often in relationships, for whatever reason, and there are often good reasons for it, our partner isn't accessible. They might come home and they might be exhausted from work, so they just go off and need to do their own thing. It might be, one person has been with the kids all day and is actually exhausted and overwhelmed, right? There can be a lot of different reasons for why we are not accessible.
That's right.
But a key element really that we tend to see in relationship, that where partners feel very safe, very secure, very seen, is that they tend to trust that their partner is accessible if they need them, right?
That's right.
So again, an example here is I trust that when my son is in hospital and it becomes more difficult for me, the day-to-day things, that then I can reach out to my partner and she will be there. And
That's
she
right.
will make time to listen to me. She will
Right.
make time to give me a hug, right? Even if she's at work sometimes and she's very busy, I know that if things are really bad, if he's having a surgery and suddenly things aren't going so well, which happened last year, and they
Mhm.
didn't know if he was going to make it, right? And I was getting very distressed. I called her up and she does pick up.
Yes.
Yeah. Because she knows if I call her doing work, it's probably something really important. So
Mhm.
she showed me, and in that, my nervous system knew she's accessible. It
Right.
reinforced the message that I can reach her if I'm in distress and if things are really, really bad, right? And
Yeah.
that's a key component for us to feel safe around this person.
Yes. So that's really important. And I like, this is these key components that we're talking about. They come from Sue Johnson's work around couples, right? Because what can be really confusing, we're talking about in attachment, is it's so much focused around children.
Mm.
And then what does that end up looking like between two adults, right? And that first one, the way I like the way Sue kind of puts the whole arc together, and she says, it answers the question, are you there for me? Right.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying here, right? So she breaks it down into those three ARE of are you there for me? The accessibility that you're naming, then responsiveness, and then emotional engagement. And that's kind
Yes.
of that arc there. And then we have to start with, are you there for me? If I reach.
Yes.
Now, this is not done perfectly. We're not talking about every time your spouse calls, you have to answer the phone, right? Again, because that would be saying, this is what you have to do to get that. We're not saying that because we're still talking about this felt sense, right?
Yes.
Because accessibility also has to do with, yes, when I call, right? And what kind of one of the ways that we structured this actually growing up was when my parents went out and the kids were home, there was a pattern, and I kind of adopted this into our relationship, which was, this is before caller ID and all this stuff, right? So we just had one on the wall. My parents would call and hang up, and then they would call right back. And we would know that that was their signal to say, hey, it's us, pick up the phone.
Get you.
Right? Great idea. So if my wife calls me and then she hangs up, and if she calls me right back again, I know, if I'm paying attention, I can see it, I gotta answer that call, right?
Yes.
This is a big thing, right? That's her bat signal to me, if you will.
Yes.
But also, because it's a felt sense, I want to add, I don't always have to call my wife in the moment. But because I'm an adult and I'm not a child, which is how we carry security in adult relationships, because, kids have to go find mom, they have to go find dad, and they come be close, and then they'll go back out. I can pull my wife into the moment without having to pull my wife into the moment. In other words, I can hear her words in my head. Her words are accessible to me because she has said them over and over, right? So I can go into these kind of moments, and I can, if I need to, I can call her, but I can also say in my head, what would I hear my wife say?
Yes.
She would say, you're doing a great job, right? Her words are accessible to me, even if she isn't physically accessible to me, because it's a felt sense of she is going to be there for me, whether I can do it now or I have to wait till I get home.
Yes.
But it answers the question and goes, is your wife going to be responsive to, is she going to be there for you? And the resounding felt sense is yes.
And I think that's beautiful what you're describing, because what you're describing is when this has happened repeatedly, I can start internally myself to access that resource even when the person isn't there, right? But for that to be accessible, we have to have that repeated felt sense that they actually are. But you said an important point is accessibility doesn't mean that you're there all the time, every time they call. That's completely unrealistic, right?
Yeah, it's unreasonable.
But I think, and unreasonable. Accessibility has a much higher importance in moments of distress, which is why I gave the example about my son being in hospital surgery, not going very well, because in that moment is very
She
important.
would have known, right?
Yes. And also, like you said, it's good to have a sign, because at just call, hey, I want to have a catch up. Of course, it's fine. If she's at work, I don't expect her to pick up just because I want to have a catch up, or she might be busy with, maybe she's out shopping with the kids. And, I don't expect her to pick up the phone all the time whenever I want to have a chit chat, right?
Right.
That would be, like you said, very unreasonable.
Yeah.
Or every time I have any kind of stress, a client paying me late, I can't expect to call up and she's straight away. So that's not accessibility. Is having a more predictable pattern of how we engage and when and how I can reach you, right? That predictability. Yes. And at the same time, also knowing that in moments of real distress, like you said, maybe you have a signal like you called twice or whatever it might be, right? That you are able to get a hold of them. Because in these moments, it really does matter, even as an adult, right? That I'm not sitting there feeling alone suddenly with things deteriorating for my son, right? And it becomes very overwhelming and very scary. That's when it's really important that somehow I can access her.
Yes. No, I think that's so important. You're even saying what you said like last episode, which is it's the predictability of it, right? What in my mind is the model for our relationship? If it's predictable, that's going to be the model that I hold in my body. And if that's an argument, that's the model I hold in my body. If it's an engaged like accessibleness, then that's the model I hold in my body.
Yes.
Right. So that's really good. I really appreciate how predictability in a relationship is such an important theme of security. Right.
Yes.
So we'll keep saying that over and over. We are going to press on into number 2, which is responsiveness, which
Yes.
that becomes, if I reach for you, right? Will you respond to me? Right. That
Mhm.
seems pretty, and again, this all seems very basic, but if you are listening now, ask yourself that question based
Mhm.
on what I know about my relationship and the
Yes.
pattern that we have. How responsive do I really, in my body, do I expect my partner to be? Right.
Yes.
Whew. Some
And
of you are gladly going to say, no, they're really responsive, but some aren't going to say that, right? They're going to say, I actually don't know. I mean, if it's a really big thing, yeah, maybe, but on a day to day, I don't know.
yes, and I think I want to kind of elaborate on the responsiveness as well, because responsiveness is not any response, right? Because we can say
Yeah.
even arguing
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
doing the
That's
bad
a
guy,
response.
that's a
Oh, that's
response,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So that's not what we're talking about, is not having any response to your partner. It's about whether you are attuned,
Yes.
right, to what
Yeah.
their need is in the moment. And you can
Yes.
respond to that. I just want to say that's important, right? Because it can sound like, hey, okay, I do respond. When they text me and say, fuck off,
Okay.
and they get upset,
Yeah.
that's not
That's a response.
responding.
So let's do a favor here, because you used a particular word that maybe some listeners will know, some listeners won't know. But you said an attuned response, right? And we use that a lot. That's a very therapy world
True.
word. So let's break that down. What does it mean to have an attuned response to someone?
Yes, that's a really good question. And I think it's really the foundation of these conversations we talked about in previous episodes that you have. Because an attuned response means that I have a model of my partner's world. If I don't have
Hmm.
a model of their world, it becomes pretty impossible to attune to their world, right?
Right.
But if I start having a model of their world and what's happening, I know this is how they react when this happens, this is how they tend to think when this happens, then it becomes easier for me to attune. And when they
Hmm.
say something, knowing what is the implicit meaning that's happening and what's being
That's
communicated,
right.
right? And then if I'm able to attune, so let's use talked about children before. I think they're a great example. So when a child cries, right? Of course, we're going to misattune a lot because they can't communicate their model of the world to us. So we kind of guessing, is this baby hungry? Is it need to have a poops? Does it need food?
Yeah.
We're kind of guessing, and then we try some different things, and eventually we get it right. Slowly, we learn that, hey, maybe this certain way of crying, or when they're doing this way, that means more hunger, right?
Right.
So we start picking up the signals and create a model of this child's behavior, right? Meaning we can
Hmm.
respond and attune and get it right more often. We can basically understand what their need is more often, more precisely, more quickly, right? So
Hmm.
attunement is the ability to be able to have a map of the other person and be able to, based on that, more precisely predict what it is they actually need.
That's right. Yes. Right. So that's so important in your relationship. Attunement might look like your partner is upset about something,
Mm.
and they're more animated, and maybe they're going through a work problem. And if you sit quietly and go, okay, but I maybe think about this way, right? You start offering some soft, gentle nudges toward a better direction. It's going to be far more effective to go, whoa, like, wow, that's really upsetting. Like
Yes.
that, like matching your partner and just saying, I see it. I see how upset you get. I see why it upset you.
Yes.
That matching is an attuned response, because it's saying, I see the thing that you are feeling. Like when our kids come home, right?
That's it.
And they come home and there some issues at school can happen, and a kid says something mean to one of my kids, and they come home and they're like, I don't know why people would say that. And I say, I hear you. I hear you. It is like, why would someone say that about me? Why
Yes.
would that person think that about me? That's such a harsh thing to hear about yourself. I can imagine that really upset you,
Yes.
right? This is a tuning. It's listening to the emotional music of your partner. It's listening to it and
That's
saying,
right.
I see you. right? So
That's right.
that's responsiveness that we're talking about, right? And that's part of what defines the music we hear in our bodies
Mm.
as adult attachment. Like sometimes think
Yes.
of it like this. I think about it like sometimes I think about this kind of just come to me as like something will happen in my day and it's super funny. And one of the things that interesting about relational dynamics today is because oftentimes people will text throughout the day everything that happens and they come back together at the end of the day, they have nothing to report
Hmm.
because we texted 100. My wife and I text a lot, but there will be something funny that happens, and I'll play this in my mind, and I'll think about telling my wife that story, and I'll hear her laugh, and I'll be able to see her face in my mind, and I'll go, I can't wait to be in presence with her to tell her this story
Yes.
because I want to see that responsiveness, right? She's
Yes.
gonna laugh, she's gonna lean in, she's gonna say what she finds funny, she's gonna say, I can't believe that happened, and
Yes.
that's gonna be so it's not conflict, it's not all those things. It's also these really joyful moments where I get to see my partner lean in, laugh at the story, respond to it, and it fills my heart with gladness because I did it with her.
And this is, I love this point actually, because what we're talking about is we should really call it attuned responsiveness, right? Because it's not just about a
It's
response.
not
And
just
but what
responsiveness.
you're saying is so important because it's also why texting in many instances can be quite
Oof,
rubbish unless it's just
right.
dealing with basic facts. We're meeting X amount. But often
That's it.
because what is getting lost in text is exactly that. It's
Is the
pretty
attunement.
much impossible to attune because you can't hear their tonality, can't see, you don't really know if something is a joke or not. And there's often a lot of
Right.
information missing in text. So then we have to fill it in with our own fearful brain.
Mhm.
So it becomes impossible to do the attunement part we are talking about. So that's why misunderstandings and getting that response that we crave become very, very difficult over text. And as you said, it's much
Mhm.
better to wait until she's there because then I can get an attuned response because she's right
That's right.
there in front of me, right?
Yep.
So sharing in general is much, much better when we do have that, right? The
That's right.
proximity. And that's an important element too, right? And I see a lot of people who engage in text, especially over difficult conversations, which
Yeah.
exponentially increase the risk of things
Oh,
escalating and
so
being
bad.
misunderstood
So bad.
enormously because attunement is not possible over text message. Just
Not
not possible. It's not how we are wired.
Yeah, not unless, again, not unless you have an incredibly secure relationship where there is always attunement is always flowing. And so that
Yes.
becomes the music in your head. Because I can get a text from my wife and I can hear the attuned response
Yes.
because we've done it over and over and over and over and over. It defines
Yes.
our relationship.
Yes.
But it's still, even in our like very attuned relationship, it's not safe. Like I will just pick up the phone and just say, hey, can we I need to talk this through,
Yeah.
and she can go, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Da, 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 da. Great. So yes, don't use text.
Yes.
Even very secure couples will say part of what keeps their security is we leave big things out of text messages. Loads of affirmation in text messages, by the way.
Yes.
Love to send the message like, hey, I'm sitting at work. I'm thinking about you.
Yes.
Love you. Can't wait to see you this evening. Wonderful text. Text that all day,
Yes. And
but leave big stuff out of it.
exactly. And I want to give just an example of again attuned responsiveness to kind of hit home again this
Yeah,
point
yeah,
of
yeah.
how does it look like? We talked in the last episode about my friend's argument with his
Yes.
wife, right? And it's a good little example because their argument was kind of escalating into different political views, right? And they were getting completely lost in that. And again, neither of them were actually attuning to each other, which is why distress was going up. They were lacking this step, right? They were
Hmm.
accessible. So the first step they had, they were
Right.
accessible to each
They were
other,
there.
but they were not attuning and responding
Yeah.
because instead, and this is not that it was his wife's fault at all, but I'm just going to give an example of how a response could have changed that
Yeah.
dynamic with attunement. So instead of going in to say, oh, I disagree with you because I actually think X, Y, and Z
Right.
is better, then if we had attuned and knew his model of the world, which I kind of heard, was that, hey, this guy is worried about the future of his kids.
Right.
And that is what I mean by attunement. If there was a
Right.
model of what's actually happening internally, I can attune and respond to
That's
the
right.
underlying need, which is that it's not really about the politics he's talking about, and he
No.
might and might not be right. It's about he's saying, I'm worried about the direction we are going and the future
Right.
that will impact on my children.
Yeah.
And the
So
second,
you also have to be tuned into yourself for that to work, right? You-
absolutely.
tune in here, and then your partner needs to tune in as well.
Yes. And that's the only way we can have a successful response, right? That might
That's right.
actually align. So that's why we say that's the second part. And again, it's not about getting this right. They say even the most amazing parents, right? They get it wrong about 70% of the time. So
Right.
it's not about doing this because it's impossible. We don't have a full map of the other person in live real time. But
That's right.
the more clear a map we have, the more likely we are to be able to
Right.
predict. And again, it becomes about predictability because a map and
Yeah.
attunement is really about getting a more predictable model of what is it actually the other people need right
That's right.
now, right?
That's right.
And the less precise that map is, the more likely we are to miss it, not respond to them, cause distress. The more
That's right.
precise it becomes, the more likely we can predict what it actually is they're trying to communicate and then respond to it so they calm down, right?
Yep. So I like that, right? That's really important, right? The more we do an attuned response, the more predictable an attuned response can be, right? And the more we can tune into ourselves without fear that this will send us into a conflict. All right, so we're going to move into the last one now, right? So we've talked about accessibility, right? Are you there for me? When I reach, will you turn?
Yes.
We talked about responsiveness and the difference between any response and an attuned response, right?
Yep.
Which requires a level of empathy of what your partner's going through. And then the last one is emotional engagement. And it kind of defines the way you do the other two, right? And it has a big part of being attuned. But emotional engagement is, can I take a moment and identify what comes up in me when I hear you share something so vulnerable, right? Can I begin to pay attention to the emotional music in my own world? Because, I think about, have you ever seen, we're going to put the link for this clip. It's a Brene Brown clip, but somebody animated it into like a little bear, and the bear goes into this hole, and she talks about the difference between silver lining it, right? Which is like another little animated animal pops down and goes, ooh, this looks hard down there, right?
Yeah.
And then just like, I don't want to go close to it. It's responsiveness. It looks like hey, I see you, but it's not, I don't want to get in the hole with you, right?
Yes.
And an emotional engagement means I got to climb down into your hole, and I've got to see the sadness that you're naming.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to take that sadness and I've got to let it hit my body. And I've got to say, when I see you so sad, like, it makes me sad. I can't just say, oh, I see you are sad.
Yes.
Right? That's a decent response. And if that's where you can start, that's fine. But can I begin to go, where does it take me emotionally?
Yes.
Right? It brings me so much pain to hear how this part of your life seems to be unraveling, right? It breaks my heart to see that happen to you. Hey, I'm right here with you, right?
And
we're going to be okay.
And you know what? This sounds like a small detail, but it's huge when it comes to whether we feel connected or disconnected, right?
That's it.
Because
Right?
again, I think it's good the example you're bringing up here. So if there's just a response of, yeah, okay, I get you're sad. Well, I guess
Yeah.
it's a response, right? But there's
Yeah.
not an emotional engagement here,
That's
right?
right.
I'm not feeling that you are feeling me.
That's
And
right.
that's often what, again, fuels the cycle of distress. I can't feel that you are feeling me, right?
That's right.
And of course, it can be difficult because if your partner is sharing difficult things, sometimes we don't want to go into, like you said, jump into that hole where we don't
Right.
know if there's a tiger or bear or
Right.
snake or whatever it might be, or tarantula, what might be down there. So it makes sense that sometimes we're like, no, I'm not going to jump in there. And then we just say something that maybe logically acknowledge what's going on.
Yeah.
But like you said, emotionally, we are not there. And their nervous system can feel the difference.
That's
right?
right.
It's a huge difference
That's right.
because if I'm sharing my stress and my partner, she doesn't do this, by the way, but as an example, if she were just to say, oh, yeah, that sounds very sad, and then talk about something else, I feel completely alone emotionally.
That's right.
Even though she has responded, right? You can say she responded, but I didn't see that she could feel the stress I'm feeling for my son, right? But
Right.
when I can see her, the response that I actually got was she got a tear in her eye. And she said, that's so hard, right? This is
Yeah.
so hard. And suddenly I felt really emotional connected. And it wasn't that she had to fix it, because we can't fix it.
Try and fix it.
We can't fix it. But suddenly I felt emotionally we were together, and that's really connecting, right? And it really soothed me just seeing her emotional response
Yeah.
to my emotions. That was
Right.
literally the main medicine, right? And in that, there was a moment of connection, even in distress.
That's right. Yes. So I think that's such an important piece, right? Because what you're saying is emotions make the relationship sticky. Like
Yes.
that's what makes it stick, right?
Yes.
Kind of staying out of my emotions, it's like kind of just easy to slide off, slide away. I
Yes.
don't see you. But if there's emotion there,
Yes.
then it starts to turn something in us that says, "Ooh, I want to be here more."
Yes.
And it's the thing, it provides fuel for love and care, engagement, connection, right?
Yes.
I can be accessible, I can be responsive, but if it's completely devoid of an emotional experience, it's not going to stick,
That's
right?
right. That's
So
right.
that's really important. But I do want to name that if you're listening to this, there's a whole world of emotional expression that varies, and especially as some of the listeners here maybe there's neurodivergence in the relationship, and so emotional expression looks very different or is held out a little bit further, and that can be distressing. It can feel distressing, right? And so in those cases, right, so again, those would be more of the caveat than the general experience, because most men weren't given an emotional map as kids, right? So most men are going to be they might be listening to this going like, guys, I don't feel my emotions like you two. You two are just super emotional, but I'm not, right? And I am super emotional, and I know that. But we can help become more aware of our emotions, right? And more aware of our body. And I just remember a therapist shared a story of one client who did like very stoic, right? And just all the responses were kind of furrow brow, stoic responses, right? And even though they were like, yes, I understand. Yes, I understand. Well, I do. I see why it makes sense why you would be sad about that. Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, guy. But then in time, he said something in session that was really profound. And he said, um, my stomach is churning. And his wife got teary, right? It wasn't a gushing emotion, but he was beginning to notice
Yes.
something is happening. And it sent this massive signal to her, one, that he was working so hard to begin to understand more, even just about his own emotions. But his emotional expression was vastly different than my own emotional expression,
Yes.
but that he was learning and trying. And all he could say, he couldn't even identify the emotion in the moment, but he could just say, my stomach is churning.
Yes.
So what that sends the signal is, it impacts me what you're telling me.
That's
It
it.
has an impact.
We're feeling this together, right?
We're feeling it together.
We're feeling, and I think it's so good what you said is emotion is a glue, because it's so easy to get caught in trying to be logical around a
Yeah.
lot of these things, and that's often where it goes.
It's safe.
And we get lost there every single time because, as you
That's right.
said, we are slipping.
Yes.
And we also talked a bit about repair, I think, was it a couple of weeks ago, right? The repair after infidelity. And
Mhm.
that the repair happened when we could see the other person having an emotional response to the pain that they caused.
That's right.
So it really is the essence of relating. Is
It
so
is.
so I totally get, for some people, as you say, it is difficult to access this because it wasn't accessible, it wasn't
That's right.
acceptable as a child, so it's very difficult for them.
Emotions were dangerous, right?
Yeah,
Emotions led to violence in their home. Emotions. So it
that's
became
right.
very important to say, don't do that. Stay in the logic, stay in the reasoning.
Yes, so
Because
that's
it's like if I give that wolf in me a
yes.
bite, I don't know where it will go, right?
Yes.
And that's totally reasonable. And this is why we have jobs to help people begin to do that, right?
Yes. And I remember there was somebody who once said, do I really have to feel? And the answer is yes.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Yeah. If
Yes. There is
yeah,
no other way. There is
there's
no other way.
that is the truth. So we've taken you through a very quick um, run through accessibility, responsiveness, and emotional engagement. And so just to name that again, right? This is the way that secure couples maintain. This is maintenance in security, and this is the way to security, right? Is asking ourselves, Do I have these things? What's the felt sense of these things in my relationship? Do I know emotionally where my partner is? Do I know that if I reach to them, they'll have an attuned response, right? Are they there for me? And that's the big question, right? So sitting down to say, can I say yes? If I were to say, is my partner there for me when I need them? And can I feel them feel me? So that is the ARE of secure relating for adults. Yeah. All right. So we're going to wrap it up here because we promised we'd keep it at 30 minutes. And right now we're at 30 minutes. So we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us, Thomas. As always, it's a pleasure to sit with you and have these chats.
You too. And we will see you all next week.